Hello and welcome to the RG10 podcast. There can't be many, if any, people who have made the journey from working at Waitrose in Twyford to becoming a High Sheriff, but Alexander Barfield can now lay claim to that honour as he's the man who's just been made High Sheriff of Berkshire. The High Sheriff is the oldest secular office in the kingdom after the Crown, and it dates back to Anglo-Saxon times. In fact, Alexander is the 809th in the royal county. So what does the role involve? What traditions need to be observed? And how are High Sheriffs chosen? I've been speaking to Alexander to find out.
The first High Sheriff of Berkshire, Godric, was actually killed at the Battle of Hastings in 1066. So fortunately for me, times have moved on and I'm no longer expected to lead the charge against the Normans, and nor do I have to collect the taxes or race the armies or drag people to their executions as my predecessors once did. You can imagine this made them very unpopular. Think of the Sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood, right? It's the same role. Also, the High Sheriffs in time gone by were extremely powerful. So the king, because it always was a king back then, only asked their High Sheriffs or Shire Reeve to do it for 1 year, and that still remains the case to this day. But we still, as a High Sheriff, I'm still His Majesty's representative for law and order in the county. So I work with the judiciary, I work with prisons, I work with probation, I work with the voluntary sector, and I work with the emergency services. So a lot of it now is ceremonial, but I still have many duties that I have to do.
Yeah, when you say you work with all those organisations, can you define work for me?
Yeah, of course. So we do everything from police awards and ceremonies, fire service, graduations. We visit many charities and everything. Really important thing to do is to thank the unthanked. I mean, there's so many people who just go about their work. And when the High Sheriff of the county turns up to say thank you, I hope that goes some way to feeling valued. We still do citizenship ceremonies. I'm also the returning officer for the county during a parliamentary election. So often when you see it on television, they'll say the acting returning officer. Well, that's simply because the High Sheriff can't be at them all. I think we've got 8 constituencies, or we will have 8 constituencies in Berkshire on July the 4th. But I'm going to have a very late night in Maidenhead because it's the constituency in which I live. So that's the declaration which I'm going to do.
And if you can't enjoy a late night in Maidenhead,
well, absolutely. The thing about the role of High Sheriff is absolutely non-political. And it's a voluntary role as well. So, we don't get paid. We don't receive any remuneration. So from the uniform we wear to the petrol in our car, to events, entertaining, we pay for it all ourselves. We still actually have to enter. I believe the phrase is ensure the comfort and entertainment of visiting High Court judges when they are in the county. In the old days, my predecessors would have ridden out to the boundary of the county and met the judges whilst they were visiting on the assizes, and we would have ensured their safety, which is why we still carry a sword to this day.
Do you get any kind of, interesting, weird rights, like I don't know, you're able to drive cattle across Stanley?
Yeah, like a
or
free
anything like that, or you can shoot someone with a crossbow if they're within the city walls of Thatcham or something like
that. There's not so much, but we are one of the very few people who are allowed to still carry a sword in public, and I believe that when you see the reward posters and it will say reward £10,000, technically it's the High Sheriff is still supposed to put up that money, but I don't think that gets exercised very often.
So you've mentioned the sword there. The uniform itself, it's quite fancy, isn't it? Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's very fancy. It's tights and breeches and a jabot and all the frills and everything.
Kind of like Blackadder too, isn't it?
It is a bit, yes. It dates back from the 1700s, but basically, much like a lot of the judges' outfits that you'll see in court. I mean, that it dates back to the same time and just sort of never moved on. really. But the men's uniform is very, very strict. The ladies' uniform, there's a bit more variety in it, and traditionally, you see, the ladies have had a hat with a big ostrich feather, and the men get a sword. It seems, but I think I believe some of the female high sheriffs in other counties are wearing a sword now as well, which is good on them.
How did you get the role in the first place?
So you do not apply to be a high sheriff. You are asked, or rather, you are commanded to be a high sheriff, and you get 4 years' notice. So in Berkshire, there's a panel, and on that panel, there's lots of different people from various walks of life and industry and charity and faith groups and the like. And they sort of decide on a name. I imagine it's a bit like a conclave for for a pope, and then you get the white smoke. And actually, I am now part of that committee as the current high sheriff. So yeah, it's a very interesting process. And then once you are nominated, your name goes to the Privy Council. It gets approved, and your name is read out in the Royal Courts of Justice by the King's Remembrancer. And then your name sort of goes up the list every year for those 4 years. And then just before you take office at the Privy Council, the King pricks your name in vellum. So it's called a pricking ceremony. And from that point on, you cannot get out of it. And the legend goes that goes back to Queen Elizabeth I's time, when she had to sign off her high sheriffs, and she was doing needlework, and the only thing she had to hand was a bodkin, so she pricked the names. Other people say it's because lots of people didn't want to be high sheriff because you're going to be very unpopular. It's going to cost you a lot of money as well, so they tried to get out of it. But if your name was actually pricked with a hole, then you can alter it.
Did you have to keep it secret when you found out?
Yes, you have to keep it secret for the first year until it's sort of announced in the High Court. Yeah.
So nobody knew. This was firmly under your sheriff's hat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it's quite secretive. I mean, perhaps why it needs to be so secretive, I'm not sure, but that's certainly the tradition for the first year. You keep it, and then you become high sheriff and wait, and then you become high sheriff at nomination, and then you become high sheriff, and then once you stop being high sheriff, nothing.
So there's no room for modesty here, Alex. Why did you get it? Why do you think?
I believe the reason that I was asked to be High Sheriff is mainly because of my voluntary work. So I do a lot of different voluntary roles across Berkshire, and I believe that was why I was asked. But let's say I'm not a traditional High Sheriff of times gone by. Really, in the old days, it went around sort of one country house to another country house around Berkshire, and lots of the former High Sheriffs have an illustrious long line of former High Sheriffs in their family, and I don't. I was born in Oxford. I wasn't even born in Berkshire. I was born in Oxford, and soon arrived in the county. I was fostered in Maidenhead. And then I was adopted in Wokingham. And I went to a state school. I went to the Embrook in Wokingham, and I left at the age of 17. I didn't go to university, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So my first job was stacking shelves in Waitrose in Wokingham. And then I did the non-graduate management training scheme, and my first sort of full-time management position was at Waitrose in Twyford. And then I ended up doing a number of other jobs over the years, sort of worked my way up. And that's really how I got to this point.
And it's the background you mentioned there that I believe is linked to the focus for your Shrewsbury year, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I thought long and hard about, would I accept the role of High Sheriff? It's customary to accept it, but I thought long and hard about it. And I thought, well, the great thing is I get to champion those causes which are close to my heart. So for me, that is, children in the care system and those leaving the care system, which can be a vulnerable, traumatic and defining moment, in their life. And I just hope that I can empathise with and try to encourage those who perhaps don't believe, for whatever reason, that they can go on to be a success. And of course, success comes in many forms, but perhaps the greatest success of all is being able to contribute positively to society and make a difference.
That was Alexander Barfield, the new High Sheriff of Berkshire. You can find links to his chosen charities in the episode show notes. Thanks for listening to the RG10 podcast. Please do support the show by following or subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts. Goodbye.